Welcome to the Film Symbologist channel. This video will explore the Orrery from Ridley Scott's Prometheus, which is one of the most iconic and memorable aspects of the 2012 science fiction film. In a movie that is praised for its many practical effects, the Orrery stands out in part for its use of CGI to depict a technologically advanced navigational system for space travel. But the scenes depicting the Orrery are not just beautiful from a cinematography perspective, they convey a deep meaning. Beyond the impressive visual effects used to render the Orrery lies an opportunity to uncover what this device symbolizes.
What's the symbology there?
Symbology? I'm sure the word you were looking for was symbolism. What is the symbolism there? Let me explain it to you.
For his 2012 return to the alien universe, Ridley Scott decided to bring back some set pieces reminiscent of the original 1979 Alien film. Among these familiar set pieces is the voluminous cockpit of the space jockey's derelict ship. In Alien, this area of the ship is explored by members of the crew of the Nostromo. For Prometheus, the design of the cockpit was altered. The room kept its same basic shape and appearance, but cryo-sleep chambers and a staircase were added. The 2012 film also reveals that the pilot's chair is retractable, and the room itself hosts a navigational system projected by an advanced holographic technology. Now I'd like to go off on a brief tangent to discuss a couple of interesting facts about the filming of Alien and Prometheus. In the original Alien, the space jockey was envisioned as a completely alien life form with no resemblance to Homo sapiens. That being the case, and since the derelict ship had been abandoned for a long period of time, viewers of the film for decades assumed that the exploratory members of the Nostromo crew couldn't breathe in the alien ship. For that reason, it makes sense for the crew members to keep their suits and helmets on. There is, however, also another reason for this. The wide shots of the crew exploring the cockpit weren't filmed with the adult actors, but with children instead. Only the close-up shots of faces showed the professional actors on the set. This was done in order to make the space jockey in the room appear larger in scale to the audience. In Prometheus, the space jockey is retconned into a suit containing a humanoid being who breathes nitrogen and oxygen-rich air. Even though the ship and the pyramid have been deserted for millennia, the crew is still able to breathe the air inside. This can be explained through the advanced technology of the humanoid engineer race, but another reason for making the air breathable to humans thousands of years after the incident on LV-223 had to do not with the story, but with the directing of the movie. Scott did not like filming the actors with the helmets on, for aesthetics and the comfortability of the actors. Scott also wanted to film the engineers practically, without camera tricks, so he elected to use a tall actor instead of CGI for the engineer pilot. This significantly reduced the scale of the space jockey as compared to Alien. Looking back at Alien and applying the information depicted in Prometheus, we can infer that the Nostromo crew may have been able to breathe inside the derelict craft and wouldn't have needed the helmets. But then, of course, without the helmets, the adult actors would be needed, and the apparent scale of the space jockey in the room would have been greatly reduced. And we can also reason that if Prometheus had maintained the storyline of the space jockey being a completely alien being, then the air would not have been breathable. The actors would have needed to keep their helmets on, and Scott would have had to film under less desirable circumstances from a directing point of view. I thought this was an interesting tidbit about the filmmaking process in both films. Now back to the main video. David, like the audience viewing this scene, is awestruck by the beauty, scale, and wonder of the engineer's technology that is on display in the pilot's room. The scene in the film is brilliantly shot and scored, and the CGI effects are used perfectly to enhance the incredible practical set. It should come as no surprise then to hear that this scene was inspired by another work of art, a painting to be exact. A philosopher lecturing on the Orrery, painted by Joseph Wright in 1766, has inspired people for centuries. With that in mind, let's see if we can understand how an 18th century painting relates to a scene in Ridley Scott's 21st century science fiction film. To understand the Joseph Wright painting that inspired the scene in Prometheus, we need to first understand the context in which a philosopher lecturing on the orrery was made. In the 18th century, classical and religious subjects were a focus of Western artists' work. Paintings, in particular, often depicted scenes from antiquity and stories from the Bible. This was a reflection of the culture at the time, which was still broadly religious, specifically Christian. But the West was also in the midst of a rediscovery of classicism, including the philosophy, history, art, literature, and architecture of ancient Greece and Rome. Joseph Wright's painting, however, does not place a religious or historical figure or event at the center. Instead, a philosopher lecturing on the orrery establishes a scientific model of the solar system and orrery as its focus. In addition to having a renewed interest in classical antiquity, the West in the 18th century was also experiencing an age of reason, enlightenment, and scientific discovery. This is the subject of Wright's 1766 painting. His artwork depicts a philosopher, or scholar, lecturing on the orrery to an audience of children and adults surrounding the mechanical planetary model, which is placed in the center. This scientific instrument also holds a source of light, a lamp, that illuminates the scene, including the faces of the awestruck kids. The technique, color palette, and composition of the painting is familiar, but its subject matter was radical for its time. Instead of a religious figure as the focus, the source of enlightenment in Wright's painting is a scientific instrument. In Prometheus, Ridley Scott recycled aspects such as images, set pieces, and characters from his 1979 masterpiece, but changed them in order to communicate a different story to the audience. In some ways, this is similar to how Wright's painting deploys a technique, color palette, and composition that would be familiar to an 18th century art connoisseur, but depicts an unfamiliar subject, and by doing so conveys a novel message. One way to interpret a philosopher lecturing on the orrery is that it represents replacing religious superstition with scientific rationalism. But another way of interpreting the painting is that it represents a shift towards a worldview that places man's ability to rationalize the material world at the center, displacing a worldview that prioritizes spiritual relationships and a more humble understanding of humanity's place in the cosmos. So what does this have to do with a 2012 science fiction film? The so-called engineers can be seen as philosophers rebelling against something. Perhaps they are in rebellion against the religious orthodoxy of their time. The engineers on LV-223 seem to worship their own intellects, their capacity to understand, traverse, and control the material universe. And when it comes to the crew of the Prometheus, why did they come to LV-223 in the first place? What are they searching for? When the characters began down the path laid out before them by the engineers on LV-223, should they have known what would lay in store for them? What lesson should we, the audience, learn from the events on LV-223? This video is part of an ongoing series that explores the meaning of Prometheus. Previous videos have discussed whether or not the engineers changed their minds about humanity, the purpose of the so-called star maps, and if the audience should have believed the proclamations of the crew. In a future video, I hope to explore the use of the Proto-Indo-European language in the film and how it plays into the meaning of the story. Prometheus is a film filled with mystery, with lots to unpack and analyze. So if you enjoy content like this, please like the video, make a comment, and subscribe to the channel. The Film Symbologist thanks you.